habit I've had for almost 3 years now is that every day I write down a description of the outfits my friends are wearing. I do this because we go to school together and I see them every day. The exception of when I've done this is when school was virtual or over summers and breaks. I've had the same friends for a while, so the data I have on some of them is dating back to when I started doing this. At first, it was an experiment to see how often people repeat the outfits they wear. If I could find this out, then I know how often it's acceptable for me to repeat an outfit. Then it became a habit and I like doing it. It's cool to see how their styles have changed over the years, and sometimes I can predict what they'd wear based on this data. I also like the routine and going over my findings. My friends have never known that I've done this. I had a friend over yesterday and I went to the bathroom while she was left in my room. I keep all my data on Google Documents and create a new one each month so I can easily copy and paste for chart making. I had left my computer open and the document was pulled up on another tab. On the original tab, my friend and I were watching YouTube. My friend says that she accidentally closed the tab and that's how she found my document. She read through part of it and got really upset, telling me that it's weird. That's when she proceeded to leave and go tell our other friends. They only think that I've been doing this for a month. Am I wrong for tracking their outfits like this? Part 2 of how my friends found out I've been documenting their outfits for 3 years. I asked my friends if I could talk to them, and over the weekend when we were all free, we talked over FaceTime. I explained to them why I started keeping track of their outfits, how long I've done it for, and why I kept doing it. I told them that I was sorry for not telling them and I didn't realize it would make them upset. I told them I'd delete the information if they like and I'll stop doing it if they want me to. 2 of my close friends on the call said that they understood what I was doing better now. They said they didn't really mind that I was recording their outfits, but they would have liked to know first. I promised to run it by them if I do something I think might bother them in the future. They asked for me to show them my data, which I did, and they asked me to send them a copy because they said they honestly found it interesting. My other friend, the one who originally found the data, said that she was a little creeped out by it, but thanked me for explaining. She apologized for reacting so strongly without giving me a chance to explain, and I told her that it's fine and I don't blame her. We're all back to getting along now. My friends are great people. They're a little weird too, which is why we make such great friends. I love them and I'm glad they're so understanding. Lastly, for the people who asked if I have OCD, I'm not sure and I won't be able to get tested until I'm an adult because it's not something my parents would approve of. This is why you should choose your friends wisely. I work at a hotel and around 3 p.m. this guest came to check into her prepaid reservation. Despite it being prepaid, we have a $300 security deposit that's mandatory. Her card was declining for the deposit, so we couldn't check her in. She left around 4 p.m. and came back at 11 p.m. with her friend. Her friend spent $100 on an Uber to come to our hotel and put his card down for the deposit so that she could check in. Then he had to Uber back and spend another $100. The next morning, she brought me down a piece of paper filled top to bottom with her demands. She wanted her entire stay comped, additional nights comped in the future, and she wanted free room service. Her reasoning? We didn't let her check in due to her card being declined. We had a back and forth conversation about how I couldn't give her any of those things because her card declined. She kept saying things like, "So you're basically blaming me for everything?" and how she was a movie producer from London who was traveling, which is why her card declined. When she realized that I wasn't budging, she left the front desk. Luckily, that day was her checkout date, so we wouldn't have to deal with her for much longer. Or so I thought. She called a little later and asked for a late checkout. I told her I couldn't offer that to her because every room was booked up. She got mad and hung up on me. Around 11 a.m., security informed me that a guest was outside bothering the other guests. Part 2, why you should choose your friends wisely. While I'm walking over, a few hotel guests tell me that a crazy lady is bothering them. As I walk up to her, she's sitting with 2 random guests. I asked the gentleman if they're okay. They said, it's fine, we're okay. Which is when the lady tells me, "The only person bothering them is you." I ignore her and double check with the other guests who confirm that they're okay. That's when she says, "Bye, you can go now." To which I replied, "Remember, checkout is at 12. Oh, and if another guest complains about you bothering them, you'll be kicked out of the pool." Eventually, 12 p.m. checkout time hits. I send security to her room first as part of the do-outs. They inform me that her bags are all over the room, but she's not there. We smell cigarettes in her room, and after an inspection, find out that she's been extensively smoking in the room. That's a $500 fee. I authorize the $500 on her friend's card since it's the only one that we have on file. 1 p.m. hits, then 2, and finally she arrives at 6 p.m. I post a $300 checkout fee to her room as well, along with a resort fee totaling $850. When she came back, we told her we couldn't release her things until the cardholder signs authorization for the charges. This is when she throws a huge tantrum and leaves. However, it doesn't end there. Part 3, why you should choose your friends wisely. The next day, I get a call from the crazy lady's friend asking why he's being charged $850. I tell him everything and he's in shock. He said that she's having a midlife crisis right now and her mental state isn't normal at the moment. He then said the $850 charge is outrageous, followed by not knowing what he signed up for when he put his card down. I told him that putting his card down for her was essentially him taking responsibility for her reservation. I explained that I feel bad about it, but charging his card wasn't my decision. I also said that since we couldn't release her items to her, her bags are still in the room. Also, that the card on file will continue to be charged for each day the bags remain in the room. We'll only move the bags out of the room once we get an authorization form signed for the charges. He said he'd gladly pay the $350 for the late checkout, but the $500 smoking fee was too much. He threatened to open a dispute with his bank if he's charged for the full $850. I spoke to my general manager and the most we could do was offer him 50% off of the smoking fee. I also let him know that if he tried to dispute the charges, the hotel would pursue payment in court. He ended up accepting and signing for the charges. We took her bags out of the room and the crazy lady came to pick them up at 3 in the morning. Overall, I just felt really bad for her friend. I just found out that my daughter is engaged and getting married to a man who is 20 years older than her. She's 19 and he's almost 40. Apparently, she's been seeing this man for the last 6 months and recently announced their engagement. I am in disbelief. What makes it worse is that she had confided in my sister, her aunt, about this when she first started seeing this guy. My sister encouraged her to do what makes her happy and basically pushed her into this relationship. Now she swears up and down that he's the love of her life and they're meant to be. She just told me about their relationship 2 weeks ago because she said she knew her father and I wouldn't be okay with it and was afraid of my reaction. She wanted me to meet her future husband before she introduced him to the rest of the family, so she invited me to brunch with them. When I arrived, I could instantly tell that this man knew what he was doing. I can't fathom what a 19-year-old and a 40-year-old have in common. I know this man is well off from the way he spoke about work. I could feel my teeth grate every time he put his hand on my daughter's lap, and it made me extremely uncomfortable to see them affectionate towards each other. Throughout the entire brunch, I was biting my tongue. However, when he mentioned that he wanted to purchase a house in another state for them to start a family soon after the wedding, I lost it. Things got extremely heated from here. Part 2. My daughter is engaged to a man 20 years older than her. My daughter is 19 and engaged to a 40-year-old who she's been dating for 6 months. At brunch, he mentioned that he was going to move them to another state and start a family soon after the wedding. This was my breaking point. This man already has been married 3 times and has a few children from those marriages. He's also closer to my age than her age, and his children are closer to her age. My daughter could tell that I was about to burst because she quickly tried to change the subject. However, I slammed my hand on the table and expressed how inappropriate this relationship is. I called this man out for basically grooming my daughter. My daughter quickly came to his defense, saying that age is just a number and that she's a consenting adult. I told her that I would never approve of this and left. My husband and I are furious about the situation and have tried telling our daughter that this is wrong. However, every time we try to talk to her about this, she blows up on us. She's made it clear that we can't talk her out of it and I'm at a loss. Now she's invited the rest of the family to dinner to meet her future husband. Everyone has been messaging me about it nonstop. Some are shocked about the age difference and others, like my sister, are telling me that I should stop trying to stand in the way of love. I want to shake my daughter into reality, but I feel that every time I mention my disapproval, it pushes her further towards him. Am I wrong and should I just accept this? Storytime about how my dad let me get kidnapped when I was 4 years old. I'll start by saying that I have a terrible biological father. He has been a shady person all of my life and constantly caused me to get a lot of grief. When I was 4, my parents split up. My mother and I moved states and they agreed that I would visit my dad during the school holidays for a week. This one particular time, I had been with him for a few days. I was playing outside with my cousin at a nearby park. A car pulled up and I recognized the man as one of my dad's friends. He called me over and without thinking, I ran over to him and left my cousin at the park. He asked me if I could show him where my dad lived and I agreed and got in his car. I gave directions and didn't notice at all that he wasn't following them correctly. Looking back, I didn't really know the way anyhow. After way too long, I didn't realize that we were getting closer to the city, which was far away from my dad's. We pulled up to a house that I didn't recognize and the man told me to wait in the car. For some reason, I wasn't scared at all. He eventually took me inside and I definitely started to feel unsafe then. I mainly remember 2 girls passed out with their tops off and a much older man filling them up everywhere. I made eye contact with him and it made me sick to my stomach. At this point, I knew I was in a bad situation. This is when a lady took me to the bedroom. This is why you should be careful who you befriend. When I was in junior high, I was a friendly and curious person. 1 month into the fall semester, we got a new transfer student. He was seated behind me and his name was Joe. I introduced myself to him trying to ease attention. I showed him what we learned so far and helped him to look over his class schedule. We had 2 classes and lunch together. Naturally, we got to know each other and became friends. He was a quiet kid but talked a lot around me, so I assumed he was just comfortable with me. I made it clear to him that we were just friends and he agreed, so I brought him around my friends and we all started to hang out. Fast forward to spring break, I told Joe that I was going out of town with my family. He seemed disappointed we couldn't spend spring break together but understood. However, while on spring break, I ran into Joe at a restaurant. I didn't tell him where I was going, so I thought to myself, wow, what a coincidence. He said he was visiting family in the same town and I believed him. Then in senior year, Joe and I were hanging out at least 3 times a week. I noticed it was too much and I wanted to make time for my other friends as well. That's when things started to change. I ran into Joe, or should I say saw him in the corner of my eye when I spent time with someone else over myself. He started to become obsessive and clingy. The first few times, I didn't think much of it. However, it all became clear when I questioned him and he said that he accidentally followed me. Part 2, why you should be careful who you befriend. Once I questioned Joe, he confessed saying that it was because he wanted to make sure I was safe. I felt betrayed and creeped out. He apologized and asked for forgiveness. I told him I didn't want to be friends with him anymore. That's when he got angry and left. The next 2 to 3 days, he didn't come to school. My friends told me that he harassed him for snitching on him. When he came back to school, we pretended like we didn't know each other. On my walk home that day, I heard Joe calling my name in a low and unfamiliar tone, but he was nowhere to be seen. I don't know why, but my gut told me to run as fast as I could. I listened to it and sprinted all the way home. I made sure every door and window was locked. I was convinced that I was being paranoid at this point. Then my phone screen lit up. I looked to see many missed calls from Joe. Then I heard my name being called again. I looked up to see Joe in the front of my house, banging on the door. Everything went completely silent after 5 minutes, which felt like an eternity. The last words I heard from him was, "You'll always be my best friend." This issue was brought up to the school and Joe never showed up again. 4 years have passed since then, and just a few days ago, I got a couple friend requests on my social media accounts. It was him. I blocked him and changed all my social media names to something else. I don't live in that same town anymore or even the same country. However, I can't help but to feel like the scared 18-year-old me again. I'm not the friendly person I once was, and I've become cautious around other people. Storytime about how I was ghosted at my own wedding. When I was 17, I started dating my ex-fiancé. We met through mutual friends at my senior ball. Our personalities instantly clicked and we started dating shortly after. We ended up going to the same community college and transferring to the same university. Shortly after our 5-year anniversary, he proposed to me in Hawaii during a spring break vacation. I was ecstatic and instantly started planning everything. During this time, everything seemed to be going smoothly. I noticed he was working a lot of overtime and we only saw each other on his days off, but I didn't mind because I was busy with my job and planning our wedding. My parents passed away when I was young, so the only close family that was attending our wedding was my brother and sister. My brother was going to give me away and my sister was my maid of honor. The rest of our guests were his family and our friends. People started arriving and everything seemed to be going smoothly. However, an hour before the ceremony, I was told that he couldn't be found anywhere. Obviously, this worried me and everyone started frantically looking for him. I thought to myself that he'd possibly been in an accident or something grave had happened. When I tried calling him, the calls wouldn't go through and the number wasn't in use anymore. I checked his social media pages and all of them were gone. My brother went to our apartment to check for him, and when he called me, I felt like my whole world fell apart. He told me that our apartment had been cleaned out of all of his things. It's like he completely vanished. All that he left was a note saying, "I can't do this, I'm sorry." I had to tell everyone that the wedding was off. I was broken and had no idea why it happened. I spent the next couple years healing and working on myself, then meeting someone amazing who helped me overcome what had happened. I never thought I was going to hear from my ex again until one day I got a call from an unsaved number. Part 2 of how I was stood up at my own wedding. When I answered the call, my heart sank to my stomach hearing my ex-fiance's voice. All the pent-up anger I had from what he did to me came boiling to the surface. He begged me to let me explain why he did what he did. I told him that I need some time to think on it. After about a week, I decided that I needed closure and met up with him at a park. It was awkward seeing him again and he looked different. He explained he'd been in the closet for most of his life and always rejected the urges. That was until he met a coworker that he fell in love with. It turns out he had started cheating on me with this coworker shortly after he proposed. This explains why we almost never saw each other except his days off. It wasn't just overtime. As the wedding got closer, his coworker told him that he needs to end things with me if he wants to be with him. The night before our wedding, they met up and he was given an ultimatum. He either got married to me and they never speak again, or he left me and they could be together. He said he was torn but ultimately chose to leave me. However, he couldn't face me, our friends, or his family, so he ran. 3 months after this, they broke up and he came out to his family. He said he wanted to reach out to me numerous times but was scared and couldn't bring himself to face me until now. A lot was said after this, but ultimately, I got the closure that I needed and we parted ways. He asked if we could possibly be friends in the future, but I told him that I didn't want him in my life. I met my girlfriend at a party one night. She seemed like a total daredevil type of chick who grabbed life by the horns. The night I met her, she jumped off of the roof of the house into the pool. This instantly caught my attention and I was immediately attracted to her. I quickly took my shot and started talking to her. We got along really well right off the bat and things started heating up quickly in no time. We would go on adventures all the time and it was great, until it wasn't. We've been together for 8 months at this point when I started questioning what was really going on. There were multiple times when we went on an adventure and I felt like she almost got me killed. At first, I thought I was being paranoid, but over time, it became more of an occurrence on her part. For example, we went hiking on a rocky and dangerous trail with a huge drop-off. If anyone fell off of the side, they'd definitely be toast. At one point when I was making it across, she ran up and tried to push me. Thankfully, I saw her in the corner of my eye and ducked so that she'd miss, but I was shocked. She started laughing and acting like it was a huge joke. I was genuinely terrified, but I moved past it because I thought she had a dark, twisted sense of humor. There's no way she'd actually try to push me, right? Well, my theory was definitely solidified when we went hunting together. She has expertise in this area as she grew up doing it, but I've only been a few times. At one point, she literally aimed the rifle at me from afar. When I yelled at her to stop and started freaking out, she had the craziest smile I've ever seen on her face. It was almost like a switch flipped. I really thought she was going to go through with it until another hunter in the area heard me yelling and came to see what was up. When she realized someone else was around, she quickly changed her aim and once again laughed it off like it was a big joke. After this, I knew I needed to get away from her and end the relationship. However, most of my things were still at her apartment and I didn't know how to go about it because at this point, I wasn't sure what she'd do. Part 2, I think my girlfriend is trying to unalive me. I borrowed her apartment key while she was at work and quickly grabbed all my things, including my laptop that I had let her use for school. When I got on it, I was shocked at what I found. There were a bunch of websites I didn't recognize, but after visiting them, I was terrified. She had frequented websites that included a lot of gore and death. From what I could tell, she was particularly interested in acts of torture and so on. She had even Googled different ways to make unaliving someone look like a complete accident. Additionally, there were also Google searches for how to fake certain emotions and empathy. Shortly after going through all of this, I got a text from her asking where I was and why I had taken all my things. I wasn't sure if I should go all in about the things I thought or if I should play it cool. cool. I had a bad feeling that this girl was dangerous and I didn't want to just let her think that she was safe to keep doing these things. I confronted her and told her about everything I found. I also told her what I think she's been doing in our relationship. At first, she tried to defend herself and once again act like it was all a joke. However, when she realized I wasn't buying it, she got angry. That's when she started spewing threats and told me that she should have pushed me off of the cliff on our hike. After this, I started ignoring her texts, but she kept blowing me up. Her texts were getting even more aggressive. I decided I'd deal with it the next day and went to bed. However, at 2 a.m. I heard banging on my apartment door. I could tell that it was her. I could hear her angered breathing behind the door and she wasn't leaving. I called the police and had her arrested for harassment. That's when I also made a police report about everything I had found and turned it over to the police. The last time I saw her was when I was granted a restraining order against her in court because she started stalking me. The judge also sentenced her to mandatory therapy after all the evidence was brought forth. Ever since then, I've moved far away and I always watch my back.